was your name?
This looks like the start of a music video.
Yes, I do.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do like action thriller films.
An antagonist and a protagonist. The protagonist will probably have a very troubled past and backstory to him or her.
Usually you expect to see a antagonist versus protagonist, but if you have an antagonist that's very evil, usually you expect a sort of protagonist counterpart, so someone who's can also have an evil side to him, but he wants to help the city or wherever it's set to actually beat the evil protagonist, the antagonist.
Well, in an action thriller, you're usually expecting to see some kind of hard man, like Liam Neeson in Taken. He has all of the right skills and all that kind of thing.
Oh, I would like to see them save the day. Yeah.
Well, I think from the protagonist character, I think it would be a really cool thing if something happens to them and they have to go and retaliate or do something to make sure that they're no longer in danger.
Probably like a forest or an abandoned building, places like that really.
I think in terms of usual conventions, you're usually expected to see sort of high dense areas like cities, or on the other hand, no density, so very open spaces like maybe a desert or a field of some kind.
Well, in an action thriller film, you usually see quite urban locations, as a lot of the time it occurs in real life settings. So for example, in a city centre where there's loads of people around, which makes some of the events quite more drastic, like a gunfight or an explosion or something like that.
You usually expect to see sort of a wide built-up area like a city, but focus more on the apartment or the house or somewhere for the protagonist or antagonist, because you can really tell what person's personality is like. So say if you have a really sort of socially inept person, they'd have a really run-down old apartment, and then if you've had like a high-achieving detective, they'd have a really nice apartment and maybe a wife and 2 kids or something.
Probably lots with heavy bass and beats and like, not dubstep, but like things that will get your heart racing, you know, really intertwine with your feelings whilst watching it.
In action thriller films, you usually hear quite upbeat and fast-paced music, or potentially like drum and bass, because it like builds up the tension within the viewer and it really makes them on the edge of their seat.
You'd usually expect to see sort of the typical conventional music, like in the Heat shootout, where it's sort of light music with one sort of simple beat, but then you can also get contrapuntal music, like in Reservoir Dogs on the ear cutting scene.
What you'd usually expect to hear sort of very high impact music that would fit certain scenes. So in terms of if there was a chase scene, it'd be sort of maybe 125 beats per minute to 140. So it sort of contrasts and is parallel to the particular scene. And also in some scenes you would expect to see music that connotes suspense, so you don't know what's going to happen, and this puts the viewer on edge of what's going to happen next.
They probably start off quite like slow, to sort of get all the characters' backstories, and then obviously something major will happen, and there'll be a few like chasing scenes, and then at the end it'll all be good, and like I said earlier, the protagonist will save the day.
There's usually going to be a criminal that is either robbing a bank, as seen in The Dark Knight Rises, or a murder. So the two detectives are going to be trying to take the criminal down and sort of reveal maybe what his or her past is like, and it can also link into to the detectives' lives as well.
From an action thriller storyline, it's obviously something to do with someone being good and someone being bad, and they obviously clash. So potentially the villain could kill the good person's family or someone they're close to, which would make them want to get them back.
I think you need a lot of action with an action thriller film, but then also you can't rely on action too much because it will become an action film, so you need a lot of dialogue and sort of dialogue between the characters that are with each other, say partners or something, and then also between the antagonist and protagonist. For example, in the middle of Heat, when you have Al Pacino talking to Robert De Niro.
Probably like guns and knives and hats, I don't know.
Now, obviously, in an action thriller, you have guns because they're the most stereotypical and prominent weapon, because they're obviously so deadly and effective, and it's what, if it was a real situation, because they're usually spies or something, they would actually carry that weapon.
Yes, I enjoy seeing the props such as weaponry, and also I think costume has a big part to play in to sort of help describe and connote certain characters. In terms of props, like fake money or prop money is also very good to see, as you don't usually see like large sums of money in cash, so I think that can help boost the convention of the genre.
My favourite props to see are usually the personal possessions, because you can really tell a lot about someone. Say they take a lot of consideration for their own personal possessions, and also say like a necklace that belonged to their mother or something. You can really tell a lot about someone's care inside, and a lot about their personality, as well as other props like knives, guns and things like that, because that can really tell a story as well.
Well, usually a climax to an action thriller would be stereotypically for the protagonist to kill the antagonist and for everything to be settled, or on the odd occasion you get the antagonist actually winning and everyone else loses.
Probably when the protagonist saves the day, if they save the day. I think that's quite a climax.
A climax to me would be the criminal being caught, or them revealing something that is very plot changing within the film. So something that will have a big impact on the course and direction of the film.
You usually expect the plot to sort of unravel at the middle of the film, to say when you start to see the protagonist and antagonist meet. And I'd usually expect a major plot twist, say when someone dies, or maybe the protagonist has got the antagonist pinned down and can actually get him, and then that can really change how the story ends, because usually you'd expect the protagonist to win, and maybe sometimes the antagonist might win.
Tracking shots and panning shots and probably long shots, and maybe a few extreme close-up and just a normal close-up.
I would believe to see a tracking shot, maybe with a steady cam, as seen in Goodfellas and True Detective. This shot itself helps capture like a first-hand perspective of the movement that's going on within the scene, and I think it just flows very well, instead of seeing like a range of cuts which can sort of maybe disturb your attention to the particular scene. Also point of view shots, because it helps you, it sort of puts you in the protagonist or antagonist's shoes to see directly what they're doing.
Usually would see a lot of mid shots or long shots to be able to get like action pieces and stuff like that in, because obviously there's a lot of body work. So if you looked at something like The Raid during the fight scenes, then you obviously use long shots to be able to see all the characters fighting at the same time.
I think the point of view shots are really good, because then you can have the characters that aren't the main characters talking to the main audience, and I think this can really help to combine the audience to the film and make them love the film, like and this happens in Goodfellas when you meet all of the other criminals, and then also in other films like Inception, where you use a Dutch tilt to really show how the film's really confusing, but then also you can use different camera shots to really explore this, and also it shows through the camera work as well.
In particular, I like, it does link into this particular genre, I like True Detective, which is a series, because of the storyline as well, and it has a lot of action thriller conventions within it. And the film Seven, which also links in because of the plot. It's a very different plot, and it throws you off direction completely.
I'd have to say Taken, because obviously it's one of the most famous and it's really good.
My favourite action thriller has got to be Goodfellas, because you see a whole story of how he grew up in the sort of mafia-based sort of environment, and also how he sort of grew out and became a big part of it, and also how he's changed as a character, and also the constant monologue on top of the film, which also shows how what he thinks of other characters and also what actually happens as the story goes along. And it also adds realism to the film, because as it's set on a true story, you can really get the actual main person and the main protagonist and antagonist view of what's happening.
Oh, I love a bit of Die Hard.
Thank you, Tamar.
That's okay.